era partito per fare la guerra, per dare il suo aiuto alla sua terra. Gli avevano dato le mostrine e le stelle e il consiglio di vendere cara la pelle. E quando gli dissero di andare avanti troppo lontano, si spinse a cercare la verità. Ora che è morto, la patria si gloria d'un altro eroe alla memoria. Ma lei che lo amava aspettava il ritorno d'un soldato vivo, d'un eroe morto che ne farà. Se accanto nel letto le è rimasta la gloria d'una medaglia alla memoria. Per i tuoi larghi occhi, per i tuoi larghi occhi chiari, che non piangono mai, che non piangono mai, e perché non mi hai dato che un addio tanto breve, perché dietro a quegli occhi batte un cuore di neve. Io ti dico che mai il ricordo che in me lascerai sarà stretto al mio cuore da un motivo d'amore. Non pensarlo perché tutto quel che ricordo di te, di quegli attimi amari, sono i tuoi occhi chiari, tuoi larghi occhi che restavano lontani anche quando io sognavo, anche mentre ti amavo. E se tu tornerai, t'amerò come sempre ti amai, come un bel sogno inutile che si scorda al mattino. Ma i tuoi larghi occhi chiari, anche se non verrai, non li scorderò mai. Questa di Marinella è la storia vera che scivolò nel fiume a primavera, ma il vento che la vide così bella dal fiume la portò sopra una stella, sola senza il ricordo di un dolore, vivevi senza il sogno d'un amore, ma un re senza corona e senza scorta bussò 3 volte un giorno alla tua porta. Bianco come la luna e il suo cappello, come l'amore rosso il suo mantello, tu lo seguisti senza una ragione, come un ragazzo segue un aquilone. E c'era il sole, avevi gli occhi belli, lui ti baciò le labbra ed i capelli. C'era la luna e avevi gli occhi stanchi, lui pose le sue mani sui tuoi fianchi. Furono baci e furono sorrisi, poi furono soltanto i fiordalisi che videro con gli occhi delle stelle fremere al vento e ai baci la tua pelle. Dicono poi che mentre ritornavi nel fiume chissà come scivolavi, e lui che non ti volle creder morta bussò 100 anni ancora alla tua porta. Questa è la tua canzone, Marinella, che sei volata in cielo su una stella, e come tutte le più belle cose vivesti solo un giorno come le rose, e come tutte le più belle cose vivesti solo un giorno come le rose. Ricordi sbocciavano le viole con le nostre parole, non ci lasceremo mai, mai e poi mai. Vorrei dirti ora le stesse cose, ma come fan presto amore ad appassire le rose, così per noi l'amore che strappa i capelli è perduto ormai, non resta che qualche svogliata carezza e un po' di tenerezza. E quando ti troverai in mano quei fiori appassiti al sole d'un aprile ormai lontano, li rimpiangerai, ma sarà la prima che incontri per strada che tu coprirai d'oro per un bacio mai dato, per un amore nuovo. E sarà la prima che incontri per strada che tu coprirai d'oro per un bacio mai dato, per un amore nuovo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walkman, for your introduction, and thank you, Mrs. McKenna, for inviting me to speak today on the life and art of Donatello and of his contemporary appeal. Thank you to my family and my friends and to all of you here attending this presentation and supporting the Quag Library. Please allow me 2 minutes to share a personal preamble with you, because I am particularly excited to be here today and transmit to you my passion for human achievements, both for the individuals and for the forces that made beautiful and grand works happen in history. This passion has, of course, been shared by so many people throughout time, and it is founded on the belief that the efforts of mankind inspire our continuous and exceptional progress as citizens of the world. From the beginning of my education, I realized that no deeds nor efforts meant to improve the human condition should be lost or go unnoticed. I was always enamored with the efforts of both men and women to make their presence known and meaningful. Yes, I firmly believe that all of us desire to contribute to the time capsules which keep the records of our earthly passages and of the great history of our cultures. My very special thanks are offered again to Michael Martin, here with us. Michael's sophisticated expertise in the graphics of this presentation have brought out the most intrinsic aspects of the art described today, as he has consistently done in the past for my other cultural speeches. As a result of that collaboration, I will show you today numerous images of Donatello's art pieces, as well as videos that illustrate the context of the artist's production, with reference to historical figures and events that existed in Donatello's time. The city where Donatello spent most of his life, Florence, along with the architecture and the lifestyle that he experienced, stand at the foundation of his artistic production, where admiration for the human body and the spirit are at the core. The Renaissance continues to be a force of cultural transformation, and we might be living through a new iteration of it in our era of technology, presenting visual, audio, and motion-based testimonies of articulated concepts so highly speaks for our time. And this speech today will remain in the archives of the Quag Library for reference. In the art world, the energy of the year 2022 was greatly devoted to the rediscovery of the exceptional Florentine master Donatello. His own Florence and grand art capitals of Europe, such as Berlin and London, created a detailed retrospective of his works to underscore this artist's immense importance in the creation and in the launching of the Renaissance movement. Last year, from March to July, the exhibition named Donatello the Renaissance was on view in Palazzo Strozzi in Florence to continue on throughout Europe. As we go inside the palazzo, we can see on our screen the rooms with Donatello sculptures. So why is Donatello receiving all the attention at this time? Art curators in Florence confirmed that in our time we admire more and more the skilled perfection of the classical era, which the Renaissance brought back to life. Donatello is the first high interpreter of that school of thought. To reinforce this point, a February 2023 article in Bloomberg Business Week titled, "Why are so many once-in-a-lifetime exhibitions happening in our lifetime?" defines Donatello as a once-in-history exhibition, a result of today's museum's collaboration at the highest level of investments. In December 2022, the Donatello exhibit was awarded the most prestigious international art prize of the year, the Apollo Award. This award is bestowed in London to the most relevant exhibitions of the global art scene. I was in Florence at the time, and the excitement for this award was similar to that of the World Cup victory. In the daily affairs of the Florentines, the passion for the art and the artists of their city is so real. So Donatello, he entered the scene right at the start of the 15th century, when the artistic renewal in Florence was innovating beyond the Gothic masterworks of the 14th century. The lineup of personalities that for about 200 years or more would dominate this era of geniuses, promoters, and inventors has been described by the world as unique in our history. Leonardo da Vinci, Tiziano, Brunelleschi, and of course Michelangelo, they all credited Donatello for the awakening. In fact, he appears prominently among the lives of the artists as described by an important biographer of the 16th century, Giorgio Vasari, who was born in Arezzo, south of Florence, where the center of town is called Piazza Vasari. You may know Arezzo for the gold industry, for the fashion of Prada, and for important US conservatories that have programs in the city, like Oberlin College. Vasari collected in one book the substantial legacy of detailed information left to us by the artists of the era, with complete description of their lives. Writing approximately a century later, Vasari recounted Donatello's life from the beginning to the end, with anecdotes, events, and in-depth descriptions of his character. The book, Lives of the Most Excellent Painters, Sculptors, and Architects, was first published in 1550, like the Roman numerals MDL at the end of the right page indicate. Donatello was born in Florence in 1386 as Donato di Niccolò di Bettobardi. His father's and grandfather's names, well, I have 5 names, as the Florentine tradition. He was soon called Donatello by his relations, and he signed his works often as such. Son of very simple father and mother, Niccolò and Orza, Donato did not share his father's heated political stance and never engaged in politics, nor in taking sides. Instead, he regarded and respected the platform of the social classes from the point of view of their interests, of their involvement, and of their generosity toward a gifted artist. He wanted their support to express his creativity. The meaning of the name Donato is gift from God. Also, and not uncommonly, a family would endear the name of a child with a suffix, ello being one, which means delightful, joyful, spirited, and impish. Perhaps for just this reason, Donato became for his relatives Donatello, which he liked and kept for his life. The Florence that Donatello knew and where he walked looked very much like these corners of the old city that have been kept rather intact to this day. The medieval towers which survived the bombing of World War II and are cherished, everybody wants to live in one of those. And of course, the baptistry dedicated to St. John the Baptist, who is the patron of the city of Florence. June 24th is the greatest party in the city, his name. And San Lorenzo, the oldest city, which was never covered in marble by choice of the Florentines, who wanted one of their churches to look like it had been created and constructed from the beginning, the Church of the Medici. And the Bargello Museum was City Hall before Palazzo Vecchio, and now has all of Donatello's work, almost all of it, in it. And La Badia is the old cathedral, so to say, the old Church of Florence, before, of course, the Grand Cathedral was finished. Ponte Vecchio is where we go to buy gold. And it was meant to be so from the year 1100. The dome was not finished because Brunelleschi completed it in 1436. Took forever, half a century, when Donatello was already 50 years of age. Very young Donatello apprenticed in the workshops of stoneworkers, chiselers, goldsmiths, and sculptors who populated the city of Florence in very large numbers, at least since the end of the 1300s. All these artisans had been engaged in the ambitious construction of the cathedral, of the bell tower, and the churches of Florence. They were the sweat and tears making up the backbone of the immense creative vigor that was transforming the city of Florence every day with unstoppable vision. From his adolescence, Donatello's genius was well understood, and in 1412, he was an officially registered presence in the Book of the Florentine Arts as a goldsmith, Ponte Vecchio. This also explains his great ability in chiseling all the fine details of his work. Well, we know what gold means to the economy of Florence to this day. Let us enjoy a walk through the Ponte Vecchio, with its continuum of gold jewelry shops, like at the time of Donatello, and packed to capacity 3 weeks ago. Since his youth, the powerful Martelli family had patronized Donatello. One of the main streets of Florence bears their name, Via de' Martelli, and nearby their palace is the Museum Martelli, where the family of bankers collected art since the 1400s. We follow our artist to his adulthood. Donatello's full inspiration was revealed to him in ancient Rome, where young Florentines enthusiastically converged to find magnificent works of Roman antiquity. Their admiration and inspection of such treasures and the revival that ensued in art were deeply connected to the masterpieces discovered in Rome, buried right under the surface of the earth. Donatello was first in Rome from 1404 to 1407, aged 18 to 21, the college years in today's culture, and engaged in unprecedented investigations of ancient Roman ruins. The eager 15th century Florentine artists, digging through the Roman ruins and marveling at every single unearthed piece, rejoiced in their discoveries, just like the ancient Romans, 1600 years before Donatello and 2000 years from our time, had reacted at the encounters with Greek art in the 2nd century BCE. I am now establishing a parallel among the eras. By shedding more light on the Roman-Greek event, a famous phrase by Horatius, known as Horace in English, the leading Roman poet in Emperor Augustus' time, 1st century BCE, sums it all up. Graecia capta victorem cepit, capture Greece, conquer, the victor, meaning Rome had conquered Greece and was captured in turn by her high level of civilization. Similarly, the young Florentines who went digging in Rome were mesmerized by their discoveries. So history repeats itself as defined in the Greek phrase kykli ke anakykli, cycles and counter-cycles. With that emotional participation, Florence and then all of Europe emerged from the long, dark ages that came after the fall of Rome in the 5th century, leading the rebirth of all thoughts. Donatello was right at the center of that evolution. He interpreted the atmosphere of seeking the perfection of antiquity because he was conquered by the timeless culture and humanity expressed by Rome. He perceived the continuity from the ideals of the classical era with the new zeal for renovation, for rebirth, and for spiritual enlightenment after the more rigid Gothic style of the Middle Ages. Donatello wanted to reach the spectator with a new message to demonstrate the power within the individual, right at the heart of the deep new humanistic culture, of the movement, in fact, called humanism, per which Florence became the heiress to the Roman Republic and the role model for all. Upon his return from Rome at age 22, Donatello created the marble statue of David, which was commissioned by the workers of the cathedral. Imagine, these were the men who cut the stones, chiseled, and labored over the building of the church daily. They were the unions of that time, and they too, like all people of society, understood and appreciated great art to the point of sponsoring and paying for it themselves. Donatello had apprenticed with them in his early youth. They were his fraternity brothers, and they wanted him to do a sculpture for them. This statue shows great elegance and youthful tension. Donatello was 22, which would mature in his subsequent sculpture of David in bronze many years later. With the marble David of 1408, the young artist's independence as a master begins. This work initiates the series of exquisitely crafted masterpieces which for nearly 60 years were to pour from Donatello's hands. The marble David, which was placed in the first room of the acclaimed Donatello exhibition in Florence last summer, is very gracious in his pose and the gaze of his delicate face, but he strongly stands with confidence on his parted legs, as in a statue of a Roman hero who was inspired by his mandate, and like such, he's clothed with a mantle, symbol of heaven and of divine protection. His mandate was to kill Goliath, the giant of the army in the opposite camp. While in Rome, as a young artist, aged 18 to 21, Donatello met Cosimo de' Medici, the elder or the first Cosimo, both of them mesmerized by the sight of all the antiquities around them. So important was Cosimo to the Florentines that they called him Pater Patriae, the father of the country. Florence considered itself a country. At times it still does. Today, Cosimo de' Medici launched the golden era of the Medici family's power in Florence with his father, Giovanni, in the 15th century, and also recognized Donato's artistic excellence and patronized him generously with a lifelong rapport of mutual esteem. They are in fact both buried in the crypt of the Church of San Lorenzo in Florence, and we will go there later in the story. As a testimony of our fascination with Renaissance history today, we also have a very famous television series called Medici Masters of Florence in Netflix, which describes the start of this deep friendship between Donatello and Cosimo de' Medici. I point out to you that the intellectual and artistic progeny of their friendship are significantly credited with forging the vision of the Renaissance. We are now showing you a clip from the series Medici Masters of Florence, where from the Colosseum and through the Pantheon, Donatello and Cosimo meet in Rome and go to the artist studio.
Not bad.
Not as good as me, of course. But not bad.
You're an artist.
Donato de Niccolò di Bertobaldi.
What's a mouthful?
I'm called Donatello. You're not from here, are you?
Florence.
So am I. Messer
Medici.
Medici.
Then you are a banker.
I am here to learn.
A banker who wants to be an artist. All right then, Medici. Come with me.
What is this place?
My workshop. Bertolo! This is my new friend, Cosimo.
Enchanted. Have a cup.
Thank you.
The wisdom of the ancients.
Salvaged from the streets.
This is why you came to Rome.
It seems the only artist who have something to teach me died 1,000 years ago.
See.
They have no clothes.
You are a banker, aren't you?
Are we not made in God's image? By showing the beauty of man, do we not depict the beauty of God? You said you wanted to learn. Come.
It was Cosimo de' Medici who in 1430 commissioned Donatello's most famous piece in Florence now, the bronze sculpture of David, that became the symbol of the city itself. But from 1433 to 1443, for 10 years, Cosimo was exiled to Venice by the Florentines, following a reactionary takeover of the Signoria, the name of the city council of Florence, by aristocratic, conservative leading families of the city, and themselves important to the financial and cultural success of Florence, such as the family of the Pazzi and Albizzi. You find their names in important arteries of the city center: Borgo degli Albizzi, Canto dei Pazzi, because Florence always honored all of their great families in spite of the feuds. It was not until 1443, when Cosimo came back from his opulent exile in Venice, that the bronze statue of David was placed in the Medici Palace's courtyard and now presides in the magnificent Donatello Hall of the Bargello Museum in Florence, along with his first marble David. So, why David? The Old Testament hero, David, first became a popular subject in Italian art during the early Renaissance because Florence had adopted him as a symbol of their city. Remember the stonemasons of the cathedral who personally requested a sculpture of David from Donatello as a testimony of how culture in Florence always reached all people. Florence was a major center for trade and finance, yet it was relatively small compared to the large city-states of Rome, Milano, and Venice. So the city saw David, who killed the giant Goliath with a slingshot, as the improbable victor who would represent the Florentines. Many important Renaissance artists also sculpted David after Donatello for the same reasons, and they can be seen in Florence today, and also in Rome, the Bernini's David at the Galleria Borghese. In the Old Testament, David's story appears in Samuel 1:17. It tells us that David was the youngest of 8 sons of Jesse from Bethlehem in Judah, and we know from Bible scholars that David's age at the time he killed Goliath was between 13 and 15 years of age. David took charge of the battle between the Israelites and the Philistines, And I will read from Samuel 1:48 to 51. As the Philistine Goliath moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the scabbard. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. Looking at the depictions, most artists chose to show David just after the completion of the victorious act. The iconography of Donatello's bronze David follows that of his marble David. A young hero stands with sword in hand, the severed head of his enemy at his feet. However, the two statues are startlingly different. One is dressed and one is naked. The notion of the male body being the height of beauty is not a new one. It is an idea that goes back to the times of the ancients. The Greek world had established the foundation for what could be considered the ideal male form. And after centuries of the body being concealed from the public, the body was finally discovered, as the Renaissance brought a newfound mental and sensual freedom celebrated by the art of the time and fueled by the philosophy of humanism. The humanists believed that God had created man and placed him at the center of the universe, Leonardo's Vitruvian Man, empowered to express all the gifts of creation. As you recall, in Rome, Donatello says to Cosimo, "Are we not made in the image of God?" Donatello's bronze statue is the first freestanding, nude male sculpture made since antiquity. This David has an enigmatic smile as he presses his foot on Goliath's severed head. He's completely naked, apart from the hat and the boots. What he's wearing is the protection of God. He needs no clothes. David is very young, physically elegant and beautiful, while taking recognition of his historical act. As an added testimony to the popularity of Donatello, last spring at the Four Arts in Palm Beach, I was invited to prepare a sequel to be called Donatello 2 for next year. As a preview now, I will bring to the audience's attention today the statue of a very important biblical woman, Judith, who acted just as David did in the Bible and recreated the balance of heroic acts as performed by men and women equally. Donatello's great sensitivity to the irrepressible forces of human motivation is the reason why he sculpted characters from both genders to represent history. More to come next year. Even before it was completed, the statue of David has spurred violent controversies over the appropriateness of the symbol of David as the hero of Florence and of its nudity, portrayed with a nonchalant ease and comfort, but one can say with innocence. We were then in the middle of the 15th century when the heated debate about nudity in art as the revival from the aesthetics and the ethics of antiquity got all levels of citizens involved. The opposing schools of thought have seemed to reset throughout the centuries, accepting the belief that classical art transcends it all. So we thought. I had already completed my speech last spring when at the end of March, unexpected news about the Renaissance art caught the world's attention. I am referring to the serious discussion spurred by the decision in a classical school of Tallahassee, Florida, to oust the principal after some parents complained that to see nudity in art was not acceptable for young students. The subject of controversy was Michelangelo's David and the creation of man in the Sistine Chapel. The global media immediately reported the news with general surprise. Florida principal let go after failing to notify parents about lesson on Michelangelo David. And Florida principal forced to resign after showing student Michelangelo's David statue. On David's statue, the nudity. Parents decry Michelangelo's David as pornography. Well, the city of Florence and the American Academy in Rome responded by inviting the principal, the parents, the school board, and the students to view Michelangelo's David in person in Florence, and offered to honor the principal for standing by the traditional teaching of Renaissance art, which was in the curriculum of the Tallahassee School. I am happy to report that the entire group from Florida traveled to Florence. And in June, and they were received with great admiration and respect by the town and city hall with garlands and medals and food. On this very topic, once again, the excellent accuracy of the series Medici will take us to the heart and soul of the turbulent exchanges of the time in the 1400s in the city of Florence. Individuals being shown in these clips were described earlier, from the Albizzi and the Pazzi families who fought and held on to the old medieval structure of the city and refused to accept the developments of the time, both in art and in society.
Rinaldo degli Albizzi attacks Cosimo de' Medici. Cosimo is then exiled.
He may say that the painting and sculpture he has brought into Florence is for the glory of God, but I will show he has corrupted our morals with idolatrous art. He has filled our city with artists of low character. This is what he calls art. David, symbol of Florence.
After exile in Venice, the final bronze David is delivered to Cosimo and spouse Contessina.
Donatello's sculpture you commissioned has arrived.
Cosimo, have a look at this. It'll certainly be a talking point.
It's beautiful, and a sign of things to come. It should be in the courtyard for everyone to see. Now that I am back, art will once again be the language of Florence.
Andrea de' Pazzi ridicules the bronze David in the Medici Palace.
So this is art, is it? And you paid good money for this?
Yes.
I was discussing it with the Pope last night. See, I'm just a banker. Unlike Messer Medici, I don't claim to understand art. Or know the mind of a sculptor like,
Donatello.
Donatello. Yes. Is it true he intended this to represent Florence?
The boy David's victory over Goliath. It could symbolize the triumph of our republic.
I asked the Holy Father, where in the Bible it says that Goliath was slain by a naked boy who looks like a girl. The Pope was as nonplussed as I was. This is your Florence, not mine.
What's happened?
Florence is being taken over by Philistines.
Well, what do you think? Perhaps we have new decisions to make on the matter, or maybe the debate will always stay open to changing perspectives. We are fortunate to have today the majority of Donatello's immense artistic production. He used different materials such as terracotta, marble, wood, and of course bronze in his work, constantly favoring sculpture to continue the message of classicism with reverence for antiquity. Donatello also stayed in touch with the emotional and spiritual life of the Florentines of his time, that deeply identified with the religious culture of the Middle Ages. He gave us a remarkable production of religious figures, including Old Testament prophets and heroes, along with key episodes of the New Testament, all exemplifying spirituality as a very strong force. And then connecting with all manifestations of life, Donatello produced also in bronze a great abundance of classically derived figures, putti or angels called spiritelli, again spiriti, plural, plus elli, impish, like his name was, Donatello. For him, these were personifications of animated spirits and embodiments of abstract concepts, such as sensation, inspiration, and love. They also showed a particular focus on youth that the artist expressed throughout his career. To complete the slices of the pie of the energetic Renaissance revival, the learned humanists had literally gone on the hunt for classical and religious manuscripts to tie the new messages of art and society with the ancient and revered statements of the past. They deserve our attention because no human effort should go unnoticed, as we stated earlier. The monasteries had preserved all that could be saved from the devastation of the barbaric invasions. And the monks, particularly from England to the heart of the European continent, were eagerly promoting reading and education among the nations confused by centuries of destruction. The prolific work by Donatello, who addressed the fundamental values of his time, was instrumental to reassure the viewer about the great transforming events of history that were taking place and infusing a new spirit into the world. The new culture of the Western world was reimagined and reshaped in the 14th and 15th centuries because of all these collective efforts, which are the key to explain the Renaissance. Donatello continued to surprise with new techniques and artistic innovations. He went from all around marble realistic statuaries to being the first artist who applied to sculpture the new rules of perspective from painting. With his pieces in bas relief called rilievo schiacciato, flat relief, almost a contradiction in terms, Donatello, as artist of the stage, of animation, of gestural motion, came to reality. Here he intended to pull the viewer back and forth, bringing light not only to the space imagined within the sculpture, but also back to the actual space of the viewer who was experiencing the work, while creating all of this with the aesthetic beauty of virtuoso carving, a symphony. Donatello masterfully suggests that figures exist in an extended space and are not just projections on a flat surface. These figures have classical proportions and their transparent clothing are also classically derived, but the artist moves forward with their poses, which are attractively new and individualistically portrayed. Art critics have said that not even Michelangelo, oh my God, almost a century later, how can one criticize Michelangelo, had mastered the rilievo schiacciato technique to the perfection of Donatello, who after all was the inventor of it. Donatello was ever committed to his city and worked for all of his life at projects for the Church of San Lorenzo, which was the official church of the Medici family. The Medici Palace is in the square diagonally from the church. Let's enter San Lorenzo. Staging left from the main altar, one finds the old sacristy, regarded as the cradle of the Renaissance, because it was designed by Brunelleschi, the architect of the dome, and masterfully decorated by Donatello from 1428 to 1443. Shown here in a close-up to appreciate them are the two bronze doors from either side of the altar and the two arched terracotta polychrome reliefs positioned just above them. Looking up, we see the inside of the small cupola or dome with 8 polychrome stucco roundels or tondi, with the putti or angels lining the perimeter. Still in San Lorenzo, and nearing the end of his life, Donatello embarked on a project that would define yet another season of his innovation and creativity. The two pulpits in bronze are the last works of the artist. The pulpits recapture the genius of Donatello's artistry as matured throughout his life. One is called the Passion pulpit on the right, and the other is the Resurrection pulpit. The panels that make up the two pulpits are a series of reliefs that show the artist's personalized tendencies and freedom that marked the end of his career. Many of the scenes have strong theatrical elements with great motion and freneticism of the characters who express all kinds of human emotions. Their realism is exceptionally mastered, and it has been said that the intense activities of the figures allude to new directions for sculpture. The scenes are open, and their expressionistically modern style already goes beyond that of the 15th century. Rodin and Brancusi's work have been called into place at this point. Artists of modern time who understood and worked with Donatello's lessons. He had continued to experiment and deliver masterfully even when his physical skills were diminished with age. Change of scenery. This artist who magnificently staged human life and history in his sculptures is a bright shooting star, a rock star, whose trajectory landed in the movie world of our days. The David di Donatello Award, given every year to the most important movies, documentaries, actors, producers, and to other facets of the international world of cinema since 1956, is just like the Academy Awards or Oscar in the United States. It symbolizes the greatest honor of the movie academy and industry given in the Roman city of Cinecittà, the city of cinema, the Hollywood of Italy. The gold trophy is in the form of Donatello's bronze David with a square malachite base and a gold plaque recording the award category year and winner. Famous international recipients include Sophia Loren, Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor, Steven Spielberg, Marilyn Monroe, Tom Cruise, and Audrey Hepburn, just to name a few. As we can see, the 360-degree legacy of Donatello as the iconic representative of a culture that covers the centuries is exceptionally alive and admired in the world today. The statuette is a collector's item and has appeared at Christie's auctions. For all those reasons, the city of Florence created and named a large Piazzale Donatello in one of the artistic districts of the city. Every morning, walking to school, I crossed this beautiful square. In the center of the oval piazzale stands the English Cemetery, a tribute to the British community living in Florence, to which in time the American community has added greatly in maintaining a large presence of an English-speaking citizenry throughout the city and the surrounding areas. You probably know that the Chianti area, famous for its wine and just outside of Florence, is called Chiantishire. And there is an excellent and respectable magazine for the Florentine Anglo-American community called The Florentine. Several times each year, the Donatello group, comprised of artists of our time, organizes art shows inside the inspiring monumental cemetery. The admiration and fascination for the classical elegance of Donatello's style continues with relevance in the contemporary circles of art. To paraphrase our historian Giorgio Vasari, whom I introduced earlier, he said, Donatello aimed so high and achieved so much that he may be said to have been one of the first to shed light by his practice, judgment, and knowledge on the art of sculpture and good design. Furthermore, Vasari continues, Donatello was a man of great generosity, graciousness, and courtesy, more considerate toward his friends than toward himself. Nor did he ever set much store by money. What he had, he kept in a basket suspended by a cord from the ceiling. And all of his workmen and friends could take what they wanted and needed without asking. He was very happy in his old age, but when he was no longer able to work, he was readily assisted by Cosimo de' Medici and by his friends. The city of Florence celebrates Donatello every year on the anniversary of his death, December 13. He died in 1466, more than 500 years ago. Imagine the people of Florence are still celebrating the memory of their great artist with no concern for the time passing. I shall leave you with a video of the ceremony recorded for the evening news on television that day for Donatello's anniversary. An American scholar, Dr. Timothy Verdon, was awarded the Donatello Medal for his contribution to the culture of Florence. Dr. Verdon, originally from New Jersey, he told me, is now the director of the extensive Museum of the Duomo, the Cathedral of Florence. The ceremony is held in the crypt of the Church of San Lorenzo, where Donatello rests close to his great friend and patron, Cosimo de' Medici, buried just to the right. The sound of the elongated heraldic trumpets of the Renaissance, called the chiarine, the clear ones, honors the ceremony. Grazie, thanks to everyone for coming today. Let us give our applause to Michael Martin, who masterfully crafted the multimedia elements of today's presentation. And thank you again for spending this hour in Florence with Donatello and with me.